Welcome to the Hedberg Public Library. I'm Yeomans, Adult Services Coordinator here. And today we are pleased to present the program Fraud Detection and Protection with Glen Loyd, Public Information Officer for the Wisconsin Division of Trade and Consumer Protection. Glen will talk about the top 10 ripoffs and how we can protect ourselves from being victims of fraud. He will also share information about his online memoir about ripoffs he's investigated over the past 40 years. He has many stories to share with us, so without further ado, please welcome Glen Loyd.
Thanks so much for showing up here today. Snowy day. I appreciate it. I thought we might get skunked to come down and not have anybody show up. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. What I thought, well, first of all, you mentioned my online information. I have a memoir that's online of my reporting career. I was a reporter in Dallas, Texas for the CBS station, worked for a couple stations up in Green Bay, and also was a newspaper reporter in Chicago. And recently put together a memoir. This is kind of a different one because it's online. It actually isn't printed, but I did it online so I could put videos of it. I have videos of going after con artists in Dallas and up in Green Bay and some other places. And a lot of the stories that I've kept over the years, I recently was able to get them at a stage where I could embed them in my memoir. And there's a copy I printed out a copy where you can get the website address to see that and to see those videos. It's up there if you care to take a look at my memoir. A lot of my stuff online you can get to by just typing in Glen Loyd, G-L-E-N-L-O-Y-D, and then consumer protection. And a lot of stuff that I do will pop up on the internet. I thought what I'd do is talk about some of the things that have been in the news lately. I'm on channel 15 Wednesday morning at about 6:10 every week. And I'm on channel 3 a lot too. And also on the radio in Janesville, and I believe there'll be a story today in the Janesville Gazette on Packer ticket scams. Done a lot on Packers ticket scams lately. As you probably have read, there were a couple people who were arrested last weekend for selling counterfeit tickets. They can get so much for Packer tickets now that a lot of criminals are interested in making money off of people. Something else, we have an active investigation about a company who at the beginning of the year signed people up for games at a reasonable rate because no one thought that they were going to do so well. And so now that the Packer tickets have become expensive, this company is pulling some shenanigans because they've called people up who ordered tickets months ago and said, oh, there's something wrong with your credit card. We're not going to be able to give you that ticket that you paid for. And so now they can sell those tickets to someone else for 3 and 4 times the original value. So consumers should be careful. If you type in Packers, Green Bay Packers tickets at a search engine site now, you will get hundreds of hits. Everybody has Packer tickets, but a lot of those are criminals. And my advice is if you encounter an ad where they're talking about tickets for sale from someone outside the country, you know it's a criminal. And that's where a lot of criminals will make their offer. So something else that's been in the news lately, spoofing. How many people here have computers and are on the internet? Yeah, a lot of people here are on the internet. You may know what spoofing means. Spoofing is when somebody calls you up, and it can happen on your computer, but most often, recently, it's been on telephone. They will call you up, and they say, we're so-and-so from such and such a bank, and if you have caller ID, that bank shows up. For example, they called up and said, this is Associated Bank. And so you think that, you know, a lot of people have accounts at Associated Bank. You think that's Associated Bank because they're saying they're from Associated Bank, and the caller ID says they're from Associated Bank. So then they start asking you this. They say there's a problem, we need to get some information from you. And then they ask you personal information that could be used to steal your identity. Well, that's called spoofing because there's an electronic device that they use to change your ID, your caller ID. So you can't trust your caller ID anymore when a strange call comes in. You don't know really who it is anymore. And along with being able to change the caller ID, they have a device that allows a man to become a woman on the telephone. He will call up and he will say, this is Mabel from the Social Security office. And the caller ID says Social Security. But what you're hearing on the other end of the line is, hi, this is Mabel from the Social Security office. This is a device that not only allows you to change the caller ID, but allows you to change your voice to a feminine voice. And it sounds like a woman. And so you think it's a nice woman at the Social Security office. There's been a problem and she needs some information from you. So you give that information. You don't want to trust anybody that's calling up cold from the Social Security office or from a government agency. Almost always they're going to write you a letter and they're not going to call up. But that's what we're up against. We're up against people that are using electronics to fool us. Something else that actually happened with Associated Bank, but this one is occurring right now. Someone calls up and they say they're from, I can't recall the name of the bank, but it's another bank in our area. And they say that there's been a problem. Will you please give us this information so we can correct things? This is West Bend Savings Bank is what I'm trying to say. And that bank has lost $20,000 correcting problems created by these criminals. So I think the point that I'm trying to make is not only are consumers losing money, but also banks and businesses are losing money too. A real good example of a bank losing money and a consumer losing money occurred recently in the Madison area. A woman who was a Hispanic woman needed a job. So she put her resume online. And she was contacted by someone from out of the country. And they said that, yes, we need someone to be a paymaster in the United States. We have a lot of accounts in the United States. It would be a lot simpler if we had somebody in the United States to pay all of these bills. So we're going to send you some money and you can be our paymaster. And that's what they did. They started sending her checks and she put them in the bank. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that many banks, if you give them a counterfeit check, they don't know that it's counterfeit. It goes in the bank and it shows up in your account. You have the money. It shows up. It's there. So, and then they say, now we need you to pay somebody over here. So she writes out a check on her personal account and gets the money, and then goes down to the Western Union office, and Western Union's the money somewhere. That's another tip-off on how to protect yourself. Western Union, I think I read recently, where Western Union is about 1/3 of the money that goes through Western Union, or that's wired in the country, is involved in fraud. Why? Well, it gets money from one place to another, and you don't have to give your real name in some place, in some cases, or your real address. You just walk into the Western Union office in England or in Canada, and you give some phony address and you've got the money. You can't be traced. So criminals use Western Union, and they use the wire services to get the money. And a lot of these con artists are in Canada. Well, why am I picking on Canadians? Well, what happened was that con artists were going after so hot and heavy in the United States is that they went over the border, where the laws aren't as stringent as they are here, aren't as strong as they are here. If you get caught up there, you're not likely to get in as much trouble as you are here in the United States. So they're conning everybody in the United States, and you know, it's our laws don't work in Canada, so they're even safer. So anytime you hear Canada and Western Union, you're about ready to be victimized. Remember that. Canada, Western Union, you're in trouble. Even Western Union, you know, somebody asking you to send money somewhere, you know, you're in trouble. Well, anyway, getting back to this woman that was Western Union money, she of course lost that money. What happens when you put money in the bank and then you write a check and then the original check bounces? What happens to you as a consumer? Well, the bank comes after you, and the bank says, we need that money from you. You say, look, I'm poor, I got scammed, I don't have any money. The bank says, well, that's fine, we're going to force you to take out a loan for 5 years to get that money back. And that's what happens to these poor consumers. They take the checks to the bank, the banks are fooled, they accept the checks, then the consumer starts writing the checks, but they are responsible. The bank is not responsible. But as I say, we're getting back to this woman, Hispanic woman. It's a nice woman, and intelligent, but just not very sophisticated. And so then her employers that are over in Great Britain tell her that we've got a big check coming, and we want you to deposit it and have the bank wire that money, some of that money, to Japan. And so she goes to the bank and tells them that she wants almost, $100,000 wired to Japan. And the bank did it. The bank did it. So, this woman hasn't got any, would never be able to pay that money back. So now the bank is out that money. So we're not only, consumers aren't only being schemed, but businesses are too. And sophisticated banks are being scammed too. So a lot of this is being done by criminals that are outside the country. And I think we all have to do better. I think banks have to do better. Consumers have to do better. Consumer protection has to do better in stopping these criminals from ripping us off. Because, when the bank is out money, stockholders are out money. And this is getting serious. And these are little Wisconsin communities. We didn't used to have this stuff happen in our communities. Little small towns this happens in. And the way that these criminals rip us off now is they can see into our community. Janesville, is a little community, but there are criminals peeking in. Let's see, how can I rip you off? Oh, you have something for sale in the newspaper. You're highly motivated to sell something. I'll call you up and scam you. For example, you have, let's just say it's a fire engine, an antique fire engine for sale. We know that you're motivated to sell this. So we contact you and say, oh, you have that fire engine for sale. I'm a collector, and I'll give you the money. But you know, it's going to be difficult to ship that fire engine. So I'm going to send $5,000 additional dollars so we can get that shipment. We can get that fire engine towed somewhere. And so they send you the money, what you're asking for the fire engine, plus $5,000 for shipping. And then they tell you where to, you put that money in the bank, and you put that, they call you up and say, now we need you to send that $5,000 for the shipping to this address. And so you go ahead and do it, but they're telling you to Western Union the money. So you Western Union the money, that $5,000, and it's gone. You can't get it back. And the bank is going to come after you. And this happens, when you're selling a car, when you're selling a horse, and it's happened right here in our communities. So criminals around the world are able to look in to a little community like Janesville and see what's going on. Oh, this person wants a job. He's motivated. I'll rip him off. Oh, she has something for sale. I know the motivation. I can rip you off. And in the old days, long-distance telephone calls were really expensive. But now, long-distance calls are cheap. And they can see in for nothing on the internet. They can peek into our communities for nothing. And they can send an email for nothing too, for virtually nothing. They can be in an internet cafe in Africa and start scamming you right from there. It doesn't cost them a thing. So, and they're highly motivated because we've never been scammed like this before. We're not used to that. And we hear about people every day who are getting scammed this way. Very sophisticated, very creative criminals. Let me give you an example. You've got somebody in Africa or a foreign country and they don't speak English very well. And you know that they're a foreigner and that they're, and you might distrust them because they're not speaking English very well. So how do they get around that to rip you off? How do they get around it? Oh yeah, we'll call up the operator for the deaf in Janesville, a relay operator, that nice operator who will take an email from me, and then she will call somebody up and say, somebody wants to buy what you have advertised in the paper. And the nice relay operator, she's your neighbor. She talks like you do. And she's not allowed to freelance or anything. She has to say exactly what's in that email because she's supposed to be helping someone who's deaf. So, she's telling you, yes, we will send this money to you, do this, that, and the other thing. So they're very creative, and anything they can use here in the United States, they will use. And they use operators for the deaf on a regular basis. They're creative. You never know what's coming next. So be on guard and know that it could be somebody in Canada, in Africa, and Great Britain that's out there ready to scam you. Another scam that appeals to people. How would you like to work at home, making about $20 an hour? Now this isn't that old scam where you're addressing envelopes. And there's never any envelopes to stuff, never. This is a sophisticated version of a work at home scheme. Say you're out of work, you've been laid off. Say that you had a baby and you want to work at home. You answer the ad, and they say, yes, we're an international company, and we need somebody in our shipping department. But our shipping department pays well. We're going to pay you $20 an hour. And we will ship items to you, and then we want you to ship them somewhere else. Well, what happens is, you know, you start doing this. They start sending you things, and you're shipping them to Russia and Central America and other places. And then all of a sudden, the FBI shows up at your door and says, you're under arrest. You're under arrest. But what's happened is this, is that criminals who have stolen credit cards are purchasing things with those stolen credit cards. And they're small, expensive things like computers and cameras and stuff like that, electronics. And then they send them, you know, they can be from outside of the country. Most of the time they're from outside of the country. So they're going to use your address. They're going to buy things with a credit card number, send them to your address, you know, in the Milwaukee area, for example. So those things are sent to Milwaukee, and they're telling you to ship them over to Russia. And so if they said Russia to begin with, the authorities would know, we're not sending anything to Russia with this credit card. You know, we know that there's a lot of criminals in Russia. We're not going to do that. So they have you as an accomplice. And, you know, you may be arrested and taken to jail before they can clear your name and understand that you were a victim too. So watch out for the reshipping job that pays so well. You mentioned that you wanted me to talk about identity theft a little more. What I'd like to do is to personalize identity theft. You can take a look at this picture. This is someone that steals identities. You can take a close look at her if you want. She stole the identity of a young woman here again. She's young, and she stole the identity of another young woman here in Wisconsin. The young woman in Wisconsin was sleeping early on a Saturday morning, and she gets a call from a credit card company. And the credit card company said, are you trying to take out a credit card with us? And she said, no, I'm not. And the operator says, well, I have somebody on another line that claims that they're you, and they're opening up a credit card in your name. Can you imagine if that happened to you? You know, how worried you'd be? And she was telling the credit card company, well, do something about it. You know, I'm the real person. She's trying to steal my identity. The credit card company didn't do anything. Anyway, she came to us, and in the meantime, she started seeing things showing up on her credit card. You know, new credit cards opening up in her name, and hundreds of dollars charged to her account. So she contacted us, and we began investigating. And we found out that this person, I think her name was Teresa Green, Tessa Marie Green, 23, of Sterling, Colorado, was the person that was using her name. And she had a history of identity theft. And she was on probation for identity theft. And she was hired by a company that has personal information about hundreds of people across the country. It's a company out there that takes calls in the evening and on the weekends for other companies. And it's a service line. You call them up after hours and they will help you with something. And they need all of this private information. So the people that work at that place have access to people's credit card numbers, social security numbers. And anyway, this company hired her despite the fact she was on probation for identity theft. So she just started using this woman's name and ripping her off. After our investigation, she was charged, prosecuted, and she's been in jail. But those are the kind of people. She's not a violent person. She just has found an easy way of solving her problems. you know, with just opening up a credit card in somebody else's name. And as I say, she's not violent. You know, she's probably an ordinary person, except that she has found a way of ripping people off, and has done it on a regular basis. And that's what we have found in the past year. We have just opened up an Office of Privacy Protection. And we found in the past year that a lot of these things are done by repeat offenders. And there was a case right here in the Janesville area. I believe it was at a motel. They hired a guy who had had a past history of identity theft. And they hired him as a desk clerk who was taking in credit card numbers from people. So he used the credit card to buy some things and then sold the credit cards to some friends of his. And so anyway, we tracked this guy down and found he's being prosecuted, and found out that he had a record of doing this. And you know, sometimes families do it to each other, like a grandchild could do it to grandpa or grandma. Now, most of our grandchildren wouldn't do that, but you know, there are some grandchildren that do this. So, especially when you know, grandfather gets old, grandma gets old, and not keeping track of things. And you know, she's got a lot of money, and you'd like a little bit of that. So, you know, why not start using her credit card? And that, you know, that happens. Some statistics about identity theft. It's estimated that 100,000 people in Wisconsin get their identity stolen a year, for the tune of about $500 a piece. And you know, if somebody takes your credit card and starts racking up a lot of money, you're not going to have to pay that money, but you are going to have to spend about $500, an estimated $500, to remedy the problem, to call people up, to take time off from work, to get things straightened out. You know, everybody starts to look at you real suspiciously after somebody has stolen your identity and that's charged up a lot of money. So it's going to take about 60 hours to deal with it. And you know, they're always claiming that old people like me, some of you, fall for these things, right? You know, these old people, they're suckers. They get, well, that really isn't true. You know, that might be true about my dad, who is 96 years old. You know, he can't take care of himself. But when he was my age, 68, no one would be ripping him off. But you know, after he turned in his driver's license at about 90, he became vulnerable, and he did get some people that were ripping him off. But most people, you know, a lot of people our age, we're not being ripped off. You know who's being ripped off by identity theft? Young people. It's people that are, you know, are all credit card. You know, they've done credit cards since they were 16. And most victims of ID theft, a third of them are below age 30. You know, they're real sharp and everything, you know, physically and mentally. Well, yeah, but they're getting ripped off more than seniors, you know, in general. So, I want to take a few more things out of the news, and then I want to hear your questions and your comments and your rip-offs. Foreclosure scams. We've heard a lot about foreclosure. It became a reality to me last week when a former cab driver in Madison called me up. He told me that his house is in foreclosure. He had some type of brain cancer or something, and they did an operation. And now he can't drive anymore. And he has trouble speaking. So it was just his wife who was employed, and they can't make it. So his house is in foreclosure. And so they're calling him, questionable people are calling him saying that they can help him. Because When your house goes into foreclosure, it becomes a public record. It's down at the courthouse. And there are people that are looking for someone in trouble. So they find out who's in foreclosure, because it takes, months. And so you start telemarketing them, saying they can help. And what often happens is that they will come out to your house and they will say, yes, we can help, sign this paper and sign the other paper, and you do it. And you're actually signing over the house to someone else, and then they go out and somehow or another they're able to get a loan on your house that you don't own anymore. So bottom line is, you're not only in foreclosure, but now there's a loan outstanding too that they may come after you for. So people in trouble are very vulnerable. And you say, well, if they don't have any money, how can you rip them off? Well, they're vulnerable, and a lot of times they can't come up with the money. Like there was a senior couple in the Madison area, and they were in their late 60s, and they didn't have any money. And so they were reading the Inquirer or some other, newspaper. If you read, no matter what your credit is, we have a loan for you. Have you seen that? Well, you answer those ads, and sure, they have a loan for you. If you give them $300 or $400 up front, so you give them the money, and a lot of times you have to send that up to Canada. You have to Western Union that money up to Canada. And then you don't get the loan, and you never hear from them again. So people in trouble, people that owe money, are often victimized. So that's going on right now. And a scam that you would never know about, called short waiting. We have inspectors all across Wisconsin that go into gas stations and grocery stores every day. And they're measuring, when you get a gallon of gas, whether you actually get a gallon of gas. Just think if somebody was shorting you a little bit. Would you know that they were shorting you a little bit? So our inspectors go in and make sure you're actually getting a gallon of gas. Well, how do you do that? Well, it's really simple. We have something called a prover. And it's just a big can, and it's a gallon. It's a scientific measurement. But it's just a can. But it's accurate, and it shows you exactly 1 gallon. So we just fill that thing up and look at the pump and make sure that you're getting a gallon of gas. And we might also go into the grocery store and check and see if you're actually getting a gallon of milk. And we'll just use a prover. It's, a gallon, and we just pour the milk in. The reason why we have to do this is that a lot of times those things are not accurate. Those gas pumps get out of whack, and they can short you, or they can give you too much gas. And so we want it to be exact. Now, you might say, well, it evens out, doesn't it? Some people get too much gas, some people get too little gas. Yeah, it sounds, one time a reporter was telling me that. It all evens out, doesn't it? Yeah, but how would you like to be the person being shorted on the gas? You wouldn't like that. So we want everybody to get the exact amount of gas. And so our inspectors are out there. Some of the things that we find that you would never, ever find, in 100 years. Cottage cheese. Let's just look at something like cottage cheese. It comes in those nice containers. We measured and found out that one manufacturer was shorting people a tablespoonful of cheese, cottage cheese. And it worked out whether it was like a quarter, that equal a quarter. And just think of all of those packages where people were being shorted. You would never know it. It's a lot of money. And so, now, when we find those things, do we say, well, somebody intended to do this? No, well, we never say this, but we find them. We have civil forfeitures that we make them pay. Because they're going to say it's a machine, that doggone machine was doing that. And to be honest, a lot of times, you know, it is a machine. But just think, if there were not weights and measures inspectors, you know, what would be happening to people? If that machine was on the blink, you just might leave it on the blink. So we go out, and one time when we were out investigating, we found out that they were shorting the school milk program. So you'd send your kids to school and your grandchildren to school, they weren't getting all of the milk that they should be getting. And so we find things like that. Something else that we found, you go to the grocery store, a lot of us aren't buying them anymore, but they have big family packs of meat. And so you might be getting that when you're a kid, you know, you have teenagers and you need a lot of that meat. And there's a lot of packaging material that house that meat. You know, there's a big styrofoam thing in there, plastic, soakers in there. And what most people don't realize is that when you're buying food, you never pay for the container. You never pay for the container. When that stuff is weighed, the weight of the wrapping in the container is always deducted. Now, why would you do that? What's the big deal about that? Well, say that you're buying meat, which is expensive, and you're being charged for the wrapper. So they're might going to put a lot of wrapping on there, you know. So you might be paying, you know, a very expensive price for that wrapping. So, bottom line is, when you buy food, you're never paying for the weight of the container. When you buy potato salad in a container at the deli, they have to deduct the weight, and often they don't do it. And we're checking all of the time. You buy things like lobster sometimes, or scallops, and they're frozen in ice, you know, to be fresh. Well, they can't charge you for that ice. Do you want to pay lobster prices for ice? And so we often will get a lobster, and we will melt that water down and find out that people have been overcharged for it. Recently we found some scallops that had ice on them. And you know, people were paying, I think, more than $1 than they should for those scallops because of the ice. So, and the recent example happened at Walmart. You know how you go into stores and you get coffee and you grind it yourself so it's fresh? You get that bag and you put the beans in, and then you put your bag on there, and it grinds it up. And the bag is, it has to be a heavy bag, heavy paper bag, and there's a metal thing, enclosure. So Walmart was not deducting for the weight of the bag. And so people were paying, you know, sometimes 50 cents, and maybe it was 35 cents, but a lot more money than you should have, because you were paying coffee prices for that bag. Remember, that's heavy, a heavy sack, and it has a metal clasp around it. So we have weights and measures inspectors going out all the time looking for that stuff, and they find it. And also, we're looking at the checkout scanners. We'll go into a store and we'll buy maybe 50 items. And we know what it should cost. We find out if the checkout scanner is charging us the right price, and often it isn't. Just a little consumer help. Most of those mistakes are made with checkout scanners on things like after Christmas, when things are really at a great sale and it's been marked down a couple times. That's when it's most likely to happen, when there's been a lot of changes and the cash register or the checkout scanner has not been kept up with the price. So when you're buying something on sale now, or anytime, make sure that you get the sale price, because that's often where the mistakes are. So that's everything that I can think of consumer protection at this minute. Now I want to hear about your consumer rip-offs. Anybody have any? Anybody have any questions? Yes.
This isn't really a rip-off, I suppose, but there were two places where you could go and get your credit report. One is called freecreditreport.net or whatever, and the other is called annual credit report. Well, we picked up on the free credit report, and it isn't free at all. You have to join some club in order to get it. But they say that real fast. It's on the radio even.
Yeah.
And on our computer then, there was supposed to be a place where you could escape. We did check that, and all of a sudden we were billed right away quick on our credit card. Well, we finally called up the person on the internet, and she, after a lot of screaming and yelling, agreed to take it off. I mean, I was the one who was screaming and yelling. But the problem was it said free credit report, which was not free, and it's annual credit report that is free, I'm told, but I haven't checked into that one.
Well, if you're looking for the free credit report and you go and put it in a search engine on the internet, you will get thousands and thousands and thousands of free credit report.
See, we're told this by a certain person, a financial person, that free credit report. But then there's annual credit report, and it may be that we made the mistake by thinking we should have gone to the free, but actually there is a free one.
Well, I know there is. I know there is. But your chances of getting to that free one, if you have to look it up in a search engine, which a lot of people do, you'll never get it. Because I'm saying that there are thousands and thousands, and they all say free credit report, and they're like yours. You know, you have to pay something.
So we got out of it. What is actually the one that's free that we could?
It's the annual one, but I'm not exactly sure on the address. If anybody wants to check their credit report out, some people are not on the internet. Some people want to do it by telephone. Some people want to do it by mail. You can actually call my department at the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. I'm going to give you an 800 number, and we'll send you out a packet of information that tells you how you can get your free credit report by mail, by telephone, by internet. And you just call this number, 1-800-422-7128. And maybe I'll write it down and put it over there, but it's 1-800-422-7128. And you know, that number is such an important number. She's writing that number down, 1-800-422-7128. That number is so valuable because you can call that number right now, and there are a bunch of people that are manning our hotline, and you can say, somebody just offered me this on the telephone. Our hotline people will say, don't do it, it's a ripoff, you know, because they know. Oh, you want information on getting your free credit report? I'll put that in the mail to you today. Oh, you want information about a company? Whether to do business with a company? I'll look that up right away for you. Oh, such and such a company? We have 50 complaints about them. 50 complaints. You got ripped off. You got misled by a free credit report. I'll send you out a complaint form. And you send it out a complaint form. Last year, we got $15 million back for Wisconsin consumers, people filing complaints. So that number is really important, to check up, to see if something's a ripoff, to complain, to get brochures on just about anything. Are you hiring a home improvement contractor? For sure, you better call us up. I meant to mention this today, that anyone in Wisconsin can call themselves a home improvement contractor. Anyone. Do you have to go to school to do it? No. Do you have to have any experience? No. There isn't any, test that you have to take in general. Some cities, like Milwaukee, have some requirements. But in general, in Wisconsin, anybody can call themselves a home improvement contractor. And, most home improvement contractors, the contractors are going to be for thousands of dollars. So you better be calling us up, asking if there are any complaints on that contractor. That's the key, yes.
Yeah, let's say you are a home improvement contractor and you're in a very competitive market. Is there anything to protect you from a complaint from a competitor, simply to try to undermine your business? I mean, does your department check out complaints like that to make sure they're legitimate?
Yeah. We find out that if one contractor is trying to say bad things about another, that when you file a complaint with us, it goes to somebody that is looking up a record. Oh, you know, who is this? And we might even know that other contractor. So no, that might be tried, but I think in most cases it's not going to work. But the least that you can do, you know, if you're having a consumer problem, the least that you can do is file a complaint, even though you won't get any money back, because it's going to help the next person. The next person is going to call, do you know anything about this company? Yes, we have 5 complaints about that company. That tells you to be careful. So even though you're out, you've lost the money, file the complaint to warn the next person. Yeah, it's a good idea. Yes, sir.
Do you have any way that you give a list of the people that are the companies that are scamming people? Like I'm saying, the ones that cut you short on gas or cottage cheese, or the ones that mislabel the, I mean, I would think if you say it's so frequent, why don't you ever see in the paper or hear on the radio or TV that such and such a company was charged with defrauding the public?
You know, you do, but we get hundreds of complaints. We have to, you know, the complaints have to show up first. And then we give it to an investigator. And the investigator may take it and then it goes to someone else. And they say, yes, we're going to prosecute. Then it's referred for prosecution. And then, you know, it's got to either go to the Attorney General or to a local district attorney. And so in all of those stages, you know, there's an opportunity to go or to write a warning letter saying, keep it up, and you are going to be prosecuted. Because we want compliance. We don't want to put everybody in jail. And a lot of people aren't doing things knowingly. So we want compliance. If you're doing something, we're going to write you a letter saying, what you're doing is against the law. Keep it up, and we will prosecute. So that's the first, you know, you're not going to put people in jail because they didn't know the law to begin with. But once we have it established that you're breaking the law and you do it again, then we're going to write up an investigation and refer you for prosecution. And that will get in the newspaper. And it's my job to publicize those. So it does get there, but you know, there has to be a number of complaints. We have to be able to document them. And we also have to sell the district attorney on prosecuting. Just think, we go to a district attorney, and they're doing a great job, but they're prosecuting rapes, murders, and robberies, and we're here trying to get a consumer deal. Oh, he was charging too much at the checkout scanner. He made a mistake. You know what the district attorneys say to us? Get out of here. So we have to warn people, and what we do, everything that I've told you about about Walmart, I wrote a press release. I did a lot of interviews, and people knew. I don't think Walmart did it on purpose, but it happened, and we told people. And for the scallops that we were telling about, we put out a press release on that and named them. And Walmart, I think, paid $100,000 civil forfeiture. It was a lot of money. I don't know exactly what it was. But so a lot of times these people have to pay civil forfeiture. That's what we can do. We can say, you want to go to court, you have to spend a lot of money. Here's the way we propose to settle it. Civil forfeiture. Give the money and it goes back to the state. So that's the way a lot of those things are resolved. But we always do a press release on them. So there are lists, yes.
Brings to mind at times we buy coleslaw or potato salad, like say at the deli at Walmart.
Yeah.
And they'll take the container, how much amount, say a pound. So that container is actually included in the weight when she sets that on the scale. The weight of the container. She's not weighing a pound of potato salad, putting it on a paper and then putting it on the scale. She's putting it in the container and that sets the container on the scale, and then it automatically rings up the weight and the cost.
Well, what you're saying, yes, you're right. The scales are programmed to deduct the weight.
Oh, they are supposed to be?
Yeah, they're programmed.
Oh, okay.
But you know what happens is that there's a little turnover, and that's kind of a complicated deal, isn't it? Deducting for the weight of the package. You got people coming in all of the time. They don't know, you know. It takes like a week to train them. So a lot of it is, you know, people are not trained properly. So we work with stores to help train people.
So that should be included already, entered in the machine, that it's so much of the
Yes.
weight is automatically deducted
Yeah.
from the product.
It's called tear, and professionally it's called tear. To tear is the weight of the package is deducted, programmed into the
Right.
scale itself.
And you bring up a good point with the meat packaging, because most meats in the bottom of the styrofoam container will have a very thick patty to absorb juices. That can add ounces,
Yeah,
if that is not deducted.
they're called blood soakers.
Right,
Yeah.
I didn't
right.
want to
And-
say that.
Well, yeah, I wasn't gonna be graphic, but that's really, and that, if that's included, that can add a lot. You're paying a lot for that soaker.
Yeah, and that has happened, and just think, if they're making 50 cents, and I'm using 50 cents because that was an example,
Right.
not a recent example, but all
Adds up.
of these things happen.
Adds up, yeah.
And, you know, every year we do checkout scanners, and we might do Shopko and Walmart and Kmart, and we'll find problems, you know. Often, it isn't the employees that are in front of you. Someone didn't program the thing right. Maybe someone at corporate didn't put the right item in. So there are mistakes. We don't say they do it on purpose, but if we weren't around, I think it'd be happening a lot more than it did. Yes?
Then I have one other thing. I noticed on the front of your paper, or the paper that was on the table, you have 16 warnings and 4 concerning people. And I was looking at the warnings, number 5, Bart Starr and the Fitness Center. Bart Starr would relate to Mr. Squeaky Clean.
Well,
Was that something off color? Or?
Yeah, that's in my memoir. I was a young reporter up in Green Bay, and there was a health spa and a weight reduction place and fitness center. And they would get women in there and they'd say, "You are fat. Your husband is going to leave you. You're terrible. How could you do that to your husband? Look at, why don't you sign up for this wonderful program and you'll get fit again. Now, don't tell your husband, make it a surprise for him." So these poor women, you know, they're bashing them, humiliating them, and then signing them up without telling their husbands. And of course, you know what happened when the husbands found out. What are you doing signing up for, you know, 2 years at a couple $1,000s? We can't afford it. So those people complained to me because I was a consumer reporter. And one way I thought I could get at them was this outfit was using Green Bay Packer players of that era to promote the thing. So I said, well, I'm going to call up Bart Starr and tell him this, because his players may get into a lot of trouble because they're associated with this company. By the way, the company was owned by a Canadian firm. But so I called up Bart Starr, and he knew me because I was a television personality, and so he took my call. And I knew he was busy, he was getting ready for the season, and so I told him, I said, "Bart, you better tell your players they're going to get in trouble." So, you know, it's Bart Starr, and you squeaky clean, as you said, and I expected him to cooperate with us. He did the Bart Starr show at the TV station that I was at. So he said, "Glenn," you know the way he talks, he got that song, "Glenn, you just pulled me out of an important, I'm trying to get ready for the season. Why are you telling me this? Why are you calling?" And he dressed me down. So, you know, he was a new coach, he was busy, and he didn't have time for it. Later on, he helped me with a number of different projects, especially with kid projects, and we would bring kids over who needed an adult, who needed help, and he would take them like a father and show them all around Lambeau Field. And you know, Bart Starr is interesting. He's just a kindly man, but we had these like 5- and 6-year-old kids, girls and boys, and he'd be explaining some complicated football terminology to these kids, and they had no idea what he was talking about. But the bottom line is, he was a nice man, but he was being pressured by reporters. Reporters were saying bad things about him, and I was another person that was bugging him when he was very busy. But those are some of the stories in my memoir, which is online and free, and there are videos in there that I was telling you about before. But when I was a consumer reporter, I was sued 6 times for more than $14 million. And I talk about that in there. And, you know, that can shorten a consumer reporter's career getting sued. And one time I think I had 3 lawsuits going at the same time. None of them stuck, but they were quite an adventure for a young man in his 30s to be sued that many times. I think I'm done. You've been a great audience. Thank you for letting me go on so long, and I hope you'll take a look at my blogs. Thank you.